A very common impromptu speaking situation will often occur at the end of a presentation when there is the question and answer session. You can handle the question and answer session with confidence, applying some of the tips and techniques I'll be giving you in this session. Now, some people love the question and answer session because they just get to talk off the top of their head and they don't feel like they have to say anything a certain way. While other people, it strikes fear in their hearts. Whether you're in the I love Q&A camp or it strikes fear in my heart camp, these tips will help you do a better job and sound more clear and more confident. The first tip is to actually prepare for questions. Think of some questions that you might get and prepare some answers, at least some concepts and some themes or key talking points around those ideas, the questions that you anticipate. Then practice this method in general, the one that I have here on the screen. When someone gives you a question, make sure you are fully listening and not already formulating an answer, because you might actually miss what they're saying. So truly listen to their question. Then it is okay to pause. You don't have to immediately say something. You can pause for a few seconds to consider how you want to respond. Then you can often repeat the question, which also buys you a little bit of time, and it lets the person know that you have understood the question. If it was a very long question, you may rephrase it or paraphrase it. Then you will answer the question. And there are a lot of ways you can answer a question, but if you are not clear on what the question is or what the person really wants to know, feel free to clarify by asking questions of the question. You might start it out with something like, do you mean, or it sounds like what you're saying is, to make sure that you have the question understood. And then you can answer the question. A common way to answer the question would be our old friend prep. State a position, give a reason, provide an example or evidence, and restate your position. But it is not the only way. One of the scary things is if you get a question that you don't know the answer to. So what are some alternatives to saying, I don't know? Well, you certainly can say that, but you can add, I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you on that. And then if you want, you can add some information around the particular issue by saying, however, I do have some thoughts around that question. You might also say that you don't have enough information to give them the answer that they deserve and that you'll get back with them. Or if it's really off the wall, that's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of that. You can also encourage people to ask questions by how you frame it. Instead of the usual, do you have any questions? Why not ask presumptively and say, what questions do you have about, and then whatever your topic is. You might, if you're in person, even use your hand to gesture, like, what questions do you have? And kind of reach your hand out like you're inviting the question. It's a little awkward on video unless you're standing back. Then you could also answer your own question. If nobody asks a question, you could have one of the questions you prepared as sort of your seed question. And, wait a few seconds for someone to ask a question. If no one asks a question, you could say, many people have asked me, and then have your typical question and answer your own question, and then try to further discussion by saying, what questions do you have about whatever is the related topic you just spoke on? You can also use the question and answer time to reinforce key concepts. You can come back to the information that you want people to take home when you give an answer. Then you can deal with some really challenging situations. For example, the presentation hijacker. This is somebody who really isn't asking a question. They're just making a long comment. And you could say things like, excuse me, do you have a question? Or I'm looking for a question. Do you have a question? If the topic or the comment is really off topic, you can say something like, excuse me for interrupting, but we need to stay on topic. Do you have a question related to whatever your topic is? Sometimes you may even get a dissenter, someone who disagrees with you. That's where you might want to jump back into that LEAP acronym, listen, empathize, agree, and partner. One of the things you can do, unless they're being very attacking and they're just dissenting with you, you can say, thank you for your opinion. There's almost always more than one way to look at a situation. You might find something to agree on, just like in LEAP. I think we both can agree on, and then something you can agree on. If it's something you don't want to really get into right there in the meeting, you can offer to discuss it later. And if they're being aggressive or a jerk, break eye contact or just move on to someone else and say, next question. Finally, when you have a question and answer session, you don't want to leave on the very last answer to a question. You don't know what that last question is going to be. So always leave a little bit of time to own the end. That is, segue from your answer to a question to a closing statement or a call to action. You want to own the end on your own terms and leave people with what you want them to think about, not what was necessarily the last question. Now, for this assignment, ideally, you will practice with another person and do a little bit of role playing. And in the homework, there are instructions for the person who would be role playing with you. And what you can do is, from the previous assignment with the mini speech, you can give that little mini speech to the other person, give them the instructions for the role play, and have them ask you some questions that you can practice answering. Now for the confidence tip. It is a really simple one, and that is to use the word definitely sometimes, because it will project confidence that you know what you're talking about. For example, do you think the new marketing plan will increase revenue? Definitely. Our markets have shown that. So consider using the word definitely to sound more confident and practice preparing for and handling the question and answer session.